Hello. Today we start with our new subject, computer architecture systems. Okay. In that first chapter is a motherboard and its components. Okay. Then the chapter name is a motherboard and its components. Then what is a motherboard? The motherboard is defined as a circuit board for the computer system, also called a logic board or a main board. In the computer system, the biggest component is the motherboard, and that controls all the components of the computer system and establish a link between all the components. Yes, from the motherboard, from the motherboard, different components like ROM, CPU, RAM, PCI slots, USB ports, and other components are connected. Motherboard is a circuit board which is also called as a logic board or a main board through which it is the biggest component in the computer system, and that controls all the components of the computer system, and as well as it establish a link between all the components. Okay, through motherboard all the different components like rom means read only memory, cpu central processing unit, random access memory, PCI slots, USB ports are connected, and other components are connected. The controller's device is also attached to the motherboard like DVD and hard drive, mouse and keyboard. Okay. The computer system start using the motherboard, and these components acts as the backbone for the starting the system. Okay. The components of motherboard is keyboard, mouse, USB, parallel port, CPU chip, RAM slots, floppy controller, IDE controller, PCI slots, ISA slot, CMOS battery, AGP slot, CPU slot, power supply slot. So this is the basic or main components of the motherboard. One by one we see. First is a keyboard and mouse. Basically, there is a two types of mouse and keyboard connectors. The first connector is known as PS/2, and the second connector is known as USB. Okay. Second component of motherboard is a USB. U means universal, S means serial, and B means bus. Universal serial bus. The USB port is used for connecting the computer system. In the basically USB port is used for connecting to the computer system. In the computer system, there is a various type of devices that are connected with the USB port like keyboard, mouse, camera, scanner, printer, and other another devices. Okay. The main use of USB port is to connect the peripheral devices and computer motherboards. The main purpose of USB port is to connect the peripheral devices or resources to the computer motherboards. The peripheral devices connected to the computer system can be inserted or removed without system restart. That can be main advantage of USB port. So this is all about the USB port. Parallel port. The third component is a parallel port. The old printers that are used in the past use the parallel port to connect with the computer system. In the parallel port, multiple wires are used to send or receive multiple bits of data in a single instance. Okay, so basically parallel ports old printers यूज करते हैं जिससे हम ओल्ड प्रिंटर को कंप्यूटर को कनेक्ट कर सकते हैं. ओके, सो this is the basic use of parallel port. Okay, the next component is a CPU chip. CPU chip means the central processing unit is the Central processing unit is the processor that controls all the functions of the computer system, and the overall flow of tasks and the functions are controlled by the central processing unit, means CPU chips. Okay. For the computer system, the central processing unit is called the brain of the computer. Okay. Now the next component, which is a RAM, random access memory slots, and that slots are used for connecting the memory, which is also called as a RAM or main memory in the computer system. This RAM slot are used for connecting the RAM in the computer system. In general, there are mainly two RAM slots, but sometimes there are 4+ slots in the motherboard to increase the memory of the computer system. Okay, so this is all about RAM slots. Now the next component, which is a floppy controller. The older motherboard chip contains a 34-pin type ribbon cable for connecting the computer system with a floppy drive. In this ribbon cable, one end is directly connected with the computer system and one end is connected with the motherboard. So floppy controller is basically used for connecting the floppy motherboard to floppy drive. Okay. And the next one is a IDE controller. IDE means integrated drive electronics, are also known as ATA or parallel ATA. The IDE is the type of component that issued for the hard drive controller. In today's computer system, the IDE controller support is not supported. The next component of motherboard is a PCI slot. The full form of PCI is a peripheral component interface. The PCI slot is mainly used to insert the expansion cards on the computer. The other PCI devices can also be connected, like a sound card, network card, video card, modems, and other devices. So PCI slots is basically used to connect the expansion card to the computer system. Okay. Then the next component is a ISA slot. Industry standard architecture slot is defined as a standard architecture for expansion of bus. The ISA slot issued for connecting the input devices and modems. Clear? Now the next part of motherboard is a CMOS battery. The CMOS battery is used for storing the BIOS setting on the motherboard. The CMOS battery is also capable of storing the time and data in it. Okay. And the next slot is a AGP. AGP. A for accelerated, G for graphics, and P for AGP slot, accelerated graphics slot, is type of computer slot, and that slot is used for attaching the video card to the system. This slot is a high speed slot so that data transfer can be done at high speed. Second most component of motherboard is a CPU slot. CPU slot is a type of port that is slot is a type of port and that is used to connect the central processing unit to the motherboard of the computer system. And the last one is a power supply slot. The power supply slot is used for providing the electric supply to the computer system so that it can start and perform its function. The total power supply given to the system is around 110 AC power. In the power supply type connector, there are total 20 pins that are used to maintain the power supply to the computer system. So this is the main components of motherboard. Okay, again I repeat it. What is motherboard? Motherboard is a circuit board. That circuit board is used to connect the different devices of computer to the motherboard. Okay, the main component of motherboard is keyboard, mouse, USB port, parallel port, CPU chip, RAM slots, floppy controller, IDE controller, PCI slots, ISA slots, CMOS battery, AGP slot, CPU slot, and power supply slot. So this is the main basic component of motherboard. Okay. Now next part is a central processing unit. This is a block diagram of CPU. CPU means central processing unit, and the CPU is the hardware device in computer that executes all the instructions from the softwares. Whatever instructions come from software, that instructions are executed in CPU, central processing unit. Basically, the CPU is a composition of three major parts. The first major part is a control unit, second part is a arithmetic logical unit, and the third part is a registers. Okay, look at here, ALU, control unit. The control unit, ALU, control unit and register makes the CPU processing, central processing कंपोजिशन. ओके, तो कंट्रोल यूनिट जो है उसका वर्क जो है वो है, कंट्रोल यूनिट जनरेट्स द सिग्नल, टाइमिंग सिग्नल्स, एंड विच कंट्रोल्स द सिग्नल्स. नेक्स्ट फंक्शन विच इज परफॉर्म बाय द कंट्रोल यूनिट इज अ डिसाइड विच वे डेटा इज गोइंग इन एंड आउट. मीन्स डेटा कहाँ से कहाँ जाएगा, ये जो डिसीजन है वो कंट्रोल यूनिट लेता है. ओके, and third most function of control unit is controls decoding and execution of instruction. The execution of instructions are performed by the control unit. Now the second most important part of CPU is a arithmetic logical unit. The arithmetic logical unit performs the execution of instructions. It also performs the mathematical operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and etc. It also performs the logical operations like AND, OR, XOR, shift, rotate. Okay, and the third part, which is a registers. Registers are a fast memory, is a small amount of fast memory, which also contains the program counter, instruction registers, accumulator, and other general purpose registers. For program counter, it is used to store the address of next instruction to be executed. Okay, रजिस्टर में जो भी रजिस्टर है उसमें क्लासिफिकेशन है. फर्स्ट वन इज अ प्रोग्राम काउंटर. दैट रजिस्टर, program counter register is used to store the address of next instruction to be executed. Instruction register store holds the instruction while it is decoded. Means जो भी इंस्ट्रक्शन एग्जीक्यूशन हो रही है वो इंस्ट्रक्शन जो रजिस्टर होल्ड करता है उसको हम इंस्ट्रक्शन रजिस्टर बोलते हैं. और एक्यूमुलेटर जो है वो एक्यूमुलेटर होल्ड्स द रिजल्ट ऑफ ALU ऑपरेशन. ये जो ALU यूनिट है उसका जो भी एग्जीक्यूशन का आउटपुट रहेगा वो एक्यूमुलेटर में स्टोर होता है. ओके, and the other registers are the general purpose registers, stack pointers to use to store the stack pointers and others information. So basically CPU is a composition of major three parts: control unit, arithmetic logical unit, and registers. Control unit performs or generates the signals, decides which way data is flowing in or out, and controls the decoding and execution of instruction. Actually performs the execution of instructions which performs the mathematical operations and logical operations. And third part, which is a registers, that registers is used to hold the information, or which is a register is nothing but a small amount of fast memory. In that, the program counter is used to store the address of next instruction to be executed. Instruction register holds the instruction to be executed, and the accumulator holds the result of arithmetic logical unit operations. Okay, and the other registers are basically used for general purpose to storing the other information like stack pointers and all that. Okay, so clear what is the working of CPU, central processing unit. Now the next part is a chipset. Basic chipset architecture, north and south bridge and hub architecture. Then what is a chipset? A chipset is a set of electronic components in an integrated circuit that manages the data flow between the processor, memory, and peripherals. Okay, here, chipset is a set of electronic components and it is an integrated circuit that manages the data flow between the processor, memory, and peripherals. It is usually found in motherboard of the computer. Okay, so this is the north bridge and south bridge architecture. Here, first is a CPU. CPU is connected to the north bridge by the processor bus, and north bridge and south bridge are connected by the PCI bus. Okay, north bridge contains the MCH, memory control hub. Okay, north bridge contains the MCH, memory control hub, as well as a bridge connection from CPU to RAM and video bus. Okay, means NOT bridge is used for connecting the CPU to RAM और वीडियो बस मीन्स वीडियो AGP एंड PCI X कनेक्ट करने के लिए ये नॉर्थ ब्रिज जो है वो यूज करते हैं. और जो साउथ ब्रिज है, नॉर्थ ब्रिज नॉर्थ ब्रिज विथ इंटीग्रेटेड वीडियो इज कॉल्ड द ग्राफिक्स एंड मेमोरी कंट्रोल हब, GMCH. GMCH, which is known as a graphics and memory control hub. Okay, south bridge. South bridge, the main purpose of south bridge is control input output control hub. South bridge connection from memory control hub to slower devices like USB device, PCX, IDE, real-time clock, BIOS, onboard sound, and more. Okay, so south bridge is basically used to control or the connect the slower devices like USB device, PCX, IAC, IDE. Okay, so this is the north bridge and south bridge architecture. So north bridge is basically used to connect the CPU to RAM, CPU and CPU to AGP. Okay, and the south bridge is basically used to connect the slower devices like ID, USB, ISA, etc. Okay, now the latest chipset for PC. Look at this diagram. This is the latest chipset, or about this is a block diagram of chipset. Okay, so here is a Intel core processor, which is contain DDR3, PCI Express, digital display, Intel high definition audio, 8 PCI Express, 14 high speed USB 2.0 ports, Intel integrated 10/100/1000 Mac, Intel gigabit LAN connect, Intel rapid storage technology. This is the basic block diagram of chipset. Intel H67. Okay. Then what is PCI? PCI slots. This diagram explains how PCI, PCI-X and PCI Express slots are. Okay, this one is a PCI slot. This one is a PCI Express X1. This one is a PCI Express X16. Okay, so basically what is mean by PCI? P for peripheral, C for component interconnect. Peripheral component interconnect means जो भी कंपोनेंट्स है उनको इंटरकनेक्ट करने के लिए जो भी स्लॉट्स यूज किए जाते हैं उसको हम पीसीआई स्लॉट्स बोलते हैं. इट इज अ हाई परफॉर्मेंस बस that is used to integrate chips, processors, and memory subsystems and expansion boards. Okay, it is known as a high performance bus, and that is used to connect the chips, processors, memory, and subsystems and expansion boards. Okay, what is the features of PCI Plus? Okay, the main feature of PCI bus is it is a extremely high speed data transfer. By using PCI bus, we can transfer data at high speed. Okay. Then second features of this PCI bus is a plug and play facility. A PCI board inserted in any PCI slot is automatically detected and the required input output and memory resources are allotted by the system. Okay. Second most feature of PCI is a new approach, or we can say processor independent. Okay. So this is the basic features of PCI bus. Sorry, PCI bus. Okay. Okay, the next part is a PCI Express physical link diagram. Means two devices how to connect by using PCI slots. Okay, PCI Express, peripheral component interconnect express, which is known as PCI Express. It is a scalable input output serial bus technology that largely replaced earlier PCI slots on motherboards, which is a next generation of PCI. PCI Express is a next generation of PCI slots. Okay, here is an example or a diagram to, in which two devices are connected by using PCI Express. Okay, so here device A and here is a device B. Okay, so here this selectable width, this is the width through which device A sends packet to the device B and device B is send packets to the device A. Okay, so PCI Express physical link diagram. What is the main features of this PCI Express? It is a point-to-point connection, hot swapping and plugging, less power consumption and scalable. Then what is point-to-point connection? Point-to-point connection is nothing but does not share bandwidth but communicates directly with a device via switch that direct data flow. Means जो भी bandwidth है वो शेयर नहीं होती है, सेपरेट bandwidth यूज की जाती है फॉर डेटा कैरिंग, बट इट कम्युनिकेट्स डायरेक्टली. मीन्स हर एक डिवाइस दूसरे डिवाइस से डायरेक्टली कनेक्ट होता है, पॉइंट टू पॉइंट कनेक्शन होता है दो डिवाइस में. ओके, तो उसे हम पॉइंट टू पॉइंट कनेक्शन बोलते हैं, which is possible by using PCI Express. And WhatsApping and plugging. This means that PCI slots can change without shutting down the computer. We can easily change the PCI slot without restarting the or without shutting down the computer. Okay, this is the main feature of PCI Express. And the next feature of PCI Express is less power consumption. PCI Express consumes the less power than previous PCI technology. And the next feature is a scalable. One of the most promising feature of PCI Express is that it is a scalable, which means that greater bandwidth can be achieved through adding more LANs. Okay, so this is the main features of PCI Express. Clear? Okay. The next part is a logical memory. Okay. Basically, in computer system, there is a two types of memory: primary memory and secondary memory. Okay. The primary memory is again divided into two parts: RAM and RAM and ROM. ROM means read-only memory. RAM, which is also known as a main memory or a random access memory. Okay, basically RAM is a volatile memory. Volatile means what? When we power off the machine, whatever the content stored in the memory, that is a lost. Okay, so this is a called a volatile memory. Okay, and the second type of memory is a secondary memory, hard disk, then floppy disk, magnetic tape. These are the examples of secondary memory. Okay, so प्राइमरी मेमोरी में दो टाइप है, रैम एंड रोम. रीड ओनली मेमोरी से हम खाली सिर्फ डेटा रीड कर सकते हैं, और रैम जो है वो मेन मेमोरी है जिसका यूज करके which is also known as a volatile memory. Volatile means what? When we power off the machine, all the content, all the data which is stored on that main memory is lost. Okay, here is a बेस रैम जो है उसका स्ट्रक्चर यहाँ पे एक्सप्लेन किया है. रिजर्व एरिया, दिस इज द कन्वेंशनल मेमोरी, और वी कैन से दैट इट इज अ बेस रैम. In that the first 640 kb of the system memory is called the conventional memory. जो भी टोटल रैम है, रैंडम एक्सेस मेमोरी है, उसमें से जो भी फर्स्ट वन मींस 640 kb of memory is known as a conventional memory. Okay, this area is used for standard DOS program along with many drives and memory resident programs. Okay, so look at here, 0 kb to 640 kb. This is known as a conventional memory, which is also used to store the user programs. And 640 kb to 768 kb memory is used as a video RAM, and the upper part of memory is known as a reserved area. Okay, the conventional memory is deeply described in this manner. First one is a interrupt vector, second part is a DOS, third part is a device driver, next part is a command.com PSD program, and user data and program. Okay, so this is the conventional memory distribution. From first 640 kb memory is known as a conventional memory. Okay, and the next upper part of memory or higher part of memory is used to extend the memory. Okay, एक्सपांडेड मेमोरी मीन्स अगर हमें मेमोरी साइज इंक्रीज करना है तो इसके लिए हम यहाँ पे जो एक्सपांडेड मेमोरी का स्लॉट है वो यूज कर सकते हैं टू इंक्रीज द मेमोरी साइज ऑफ कंप्यूटर. ओके, okay, so the RAM, types of RAM, basically different types of RAM, रैंडम एक्सेस मेमोरी. जो भी रैम है उसमें डिफरेंट टाइप्स और उसका क्लासिफिकेशन किया है. इज अ रैंडम इज अ सॉरी RAM is a part of computer main memory which is directly accessible by the CPU. RAM is used to read and write data into which it is into it, which is accessed by the CPU randomly. RAM is a volatile memory. Means volatile means what? It means if the power goes off, the store information is lost. RAM is used to store the data that is currently processed by the CPU. Most of the programs and the data that are modifiable are stored in RAM. Okay. Basically, RAM chips or RAM is divided or it is in two forms. First form is a static RAM and second form is a dynamic RAM. Okay, the SRAM means static RAM. The static RAM consists of circuit capable of returning the stored information as long as the power is applied. That means this is a type of memory requires constant power. Okay, SRAM memories are used to build cache memory. Okay, RAM जो है उसके टू टाइप्स है बेसिकली, एस रैम एंड डी रैम. एस रैम जो है उसे हम स्टैटिक में रैम बोलते हैं, स्टैटिक रैंडम एक्सेस मेमोरी. एंड डी रैम जो है उसे हम डायनेमिक रैंडम एक्सेस मेमोरी बोलते हैं. स्टैटिक रैम जो है उससे उस रैम में जो भी डेटा स्टोर होता है उसके लिए कंसिस्टेंट पावर सप्लाई इज नीडेड. दैट मीन्स this memory requires the constant power supply. Okay, and basically static RAM memories are used to build the cache memory. Then what is cache memory is we see in next part. Okay, so next part is a DRAM. DRAM is a dynamic RAM. Dynamic RAM stores the binary information in the form of electric charges applied to the capacitors. The store information on the capacitors tends to lose over a period of time, and thus the capacitor must be periodically recharged to retain their usage. The main memory is generally made up of DRAM chips. Okay, सो DRAM जो है उसमें बाइनरी फॉर्म में डेटा स्टोर होता है और वो जो डेटा है वो कैपेसिटर में स्टोर होता है. और वो जो डेटा है वो रिटेन करने के लिए, परमानेंटली स्टोर करने के लिए कैपेसिटर जो है उनको पीरियोडिकली रिचार्ज करना पड़ता है. सो दिस इज द DRAM. Again, DRAM is divided into five types. The first type of DRAM is a asynchronous DRAM. Asynchronous DRAM describes is means जो भी डायनामिक रैम का जो भी स्ट्रक्चर है वही असिंक्रोनस DRAM डिस्क्राइब करता है. The timing of the memory device is controlled asynchronously. A specialized memory control circuit generates the necessary control signals to control the timing. The CPU must take into account the delay in the response of the memory. मीन जो भी डायनेमिक मेमोरी हमने डिस्क्राइब की है कि जिसमें कैपेसिटर्स में डेटा स्टोर होता है और वो डेटा रिटेन करने के लिए हमें उस कैपेसिटर को पीरियोडिकली रिचार्ज करना पड़ता है, तो सिमिलरली उसे ही हम सिंक्रोनस DRAM बोलते हैं. ओके, now the next part of DRAM is a synchronous DRAM. The RAM chips access speed is directly synchronized with the CPU's clock. Okay, in synchronous DRAM, the जो भी रैम चिप्स है उसका स्पीड जो है वो डायरेक्टली सिंक्रोनाइज होता है किससे? सीपीयू क्लॉक से. ओके, सो the memory chips remain ready for operation when the CPU extend them to be ready. This memory operates at a CPU memory bus without imposing wait state. So this is the synchronous DRAM. So then next type of DRAM is a DDR RAM. So what is DDR RAM? Double data rate dynamic random access memory. This is a faster version of synchronous DRAM. It performs on both edges of the clock signal, whereas standard SDRAM perform its operation on the rising edge of the clock signal. Okay. Features. DDR RAM. DDR has 240 pins, higher bandwidth, lower power. Architectures use synchronous. It prefetches 4 bits at a time. Operating is a max. Okay. DDR, double data rate RAM, DRAM, double data rate DRAM. And next type is a double data rate to SDRAM. Okay. So this is a double, means जो भी DDR है उसका double. All DDR RAM chips have 184 pins. उसका double है 240 pins. DDR2. DDR RAM comes in different speeds. 100 megahertz, 133 megahertz, 166 megahertz, 200 megahertz. Okay. Similarly, DDR2 operates on at data rates of 400 megahertz, 533 megahertz, 667 megahertz, and above. DDR is a twice as fast as SDRAM, and DDR2 is a higher bandwidth, means higher faster than, means double faster than DDR1. Voltage requirement is 2.5, and in DDR2 there is a 1.8 voltage requirement. So this is the types of DDR RAM. Okay, dynamic random access RAM. First type is a synchronous DRAM. Sorry, asynchronous DRAM, synchronous DRAM, double data rate SDRAM, double data rate 2 SDRAM, and double data rate third RAM, 3 RAM. Okay. So this is the 5 basic types of DRAM. Now the next part is the concept of cache memory. What is the cache memory? In this diagram, here is a CPU, level 1, level 2. Here is a main memory and secondary memory. Okay. So recently used instructions and data are kept in a very fast memory so that the CPU does not have to access the main memory every time it requires across to the data. Okay. जो भी instructions और data फास्ट मेमोरी में स्टोर होता है, उसी से ही वो एक्सेस होता है, और मेन मेमोरी को हर बार एक्सेस करने की नीड नहीं होती है। तो वो जो डेटा है, जो डेटा बार बार रिक्वायर्ड होता है, वो एक स्मॉल बफर में स्टोर करते हैं, उसको हम कैचे मेमोरी बोलते हैं। ओके, सो कैचे मेमोरी इज अ random access memory that is a computer microprocessor and can access more quickly than it can access regular RAM. Okay, cache memory is a faster, smaller and memory which stores a copy of data from most frequently used main memory location. जो भी डेटा मोस्ट फ्रिक्वेंटली यूज होता है वो डेटा उस मेमोरी में स्टोर होता है। जो मेमोरी फास्टर है, स्मॉलर है, उसे हम कैचे मेमोरी बोलते हैं। ओके, कैचे मेमोरी इज अ हाई स्पीड मेमोरी बफर दैट प्रोसेसर नीड, allows processor to retrieve data faster than it will come from main memory. The main advantage of cache memory is that CPU does not have to use the motherboard bus for data transfer. Means just simple language में हम इसे कैचे मेमोरी को एक्सप्लेन करेंगे तो कैसे करेंगे कि कैचे मेमोरी is a small fast memory which stores the data which is most frequently used. Okay, so this is the cache memory concept. Then there is a type of cache memory: level 1 cache, level 2 cache, level 3 cache. Okay, so level 1 cache, often called as a primary cache, which is a static memory integrated with the processor core, and that is used to store information recently accessed by the processor. So cache memory में भी 3 टाइप के मेमोरी है। लेवल 1 which is also known as an internal cache memory or a primary cache, and that memory is a static memory integrated with a processor core, and that is used to store information recently accessed by the processor. Okay, so this is a level 1 cache. Level 2 cache, level 2 cache, which is also known as a external cache or a secondary cache, and that is a memory or that is used to store the recently access information. The goal or of having the level 2 cache is to reduce the data access time in case when the same data was already accessed before. Okay, so this is the level 2 or external cache. Level 3 cache is not found nowadays as its function is replaced by L2 cache. So L3 caches are found on the motherboard rather than the processor. Then the two main points are important: cache hit and cache miss. What is mean by cache hit? A request to read from the memory which can be satisfied from the cache without using the main memory is called a cache hit. Whenever the process or the CPU requested for the particular data and that data is available in cache memory, there is no need to access the main memory, then that request is called as a cache hit. And what is mean by the cache miss? A request come from memory, request come and the data which cannot satisfy uh, or the memory cache memory which cannot be satisfied from the cache, this request is known as a cache miss. Okay, so this is the concept of cache memory and the types of cache. Okay, so whatever the next part, that part in continue in next lecture. Okay, so today we stop here.